Once you've ruled out the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Denton. It is vampires, and there's a host of damned souls at Pelham House.
Thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. Can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hello everyone, this is Paranormal UK Radio, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm your host, Irene and Mark, and with me again tonight, and as always, and forever, Marcus Johnson.
That sounded ominous. Forever and ever.
Ever and ever.
And ever.
Well,
is there going to be an elevator of blood opening up here, coming down the hallways?
Yeah, ever and ever. Oh my God, can you imagine it? Well, anyway, Mark.
Oh God. Well, speaking about that horrific imagery, let's say Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Or as the Wiccans refer to as Samhain, or the Celts.
Yes.
This is the
well.
night of the year where the veil is supposed to be thinnest between the world of the living and the dead.
Okay, yes, but I don't think I'll have any problems in this house, not this Halloween. That's one thing about this being a haunted house. I never get really anything going on at Halloween, not on Halloween night.
Bro, I don't know. Maybe because there's that anticipation. Because let's face it, last week you had Herbert walking up and down the stairs.
Yes, and at the weekend my granddaughter was in the bathroom doing her hair in the mirror as granddaughters do, okay? And she saw something flash past her behind her.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I told her it was the light hitting the car parked outside the window, reflecting up into the window, bouncing off of the mirror and causing something weird happening. But it wasn't paranormal, Amy. It was not paranormal. No, it was Herbert. It was Herbert.
That's what you tell her to keep. Do your grandchildren get frightened being in your house?
No. No, because by the time they go to bed at night, when it all starts mainly happening, or whether there is some sort of interest from my ghosts about my grandchildren, they're absolutely knackered, worn out and crashed out because they've had such a busy day. And during the day when things happen, they really don't take much notice of it because it's daylight. You see, they're not so frightened in the daylight. It's at the it is the night time. It's like when my sons are here, things happen during the day and they think, oh, that's a bloody ghost. And that's it. But when it happens at night, then it worries them even more. It does worry them because it's dark, isn't it? It's the atmosphere of the whole thing.
Right. That's what most people don't realize, that paranormal activity can happen any time of the day or night.
Right.
We're just more aware of it at nighttime when we're supposed to be resting and quiet. What in the heck is that?
It's a plane.
I was going to say, is the RAF doing maneuvers over your house again?
They do, actually, yes.
Okay.
Oh, the RAF?
No, the Air Force.
No.
Oh, I'd give them a call and tell them to lay off for a few minutes when I'm doing the show if it was the RAF. No, so anyway, but they do seem to take an interest in the grandchildren. I told you, this house absolutely comes alive with energy when the kids are down here from London. And they do take an interest in them in the evening, as I've noticed and my son's noticed, when he heard the voices at the top of the stairs saying, let's go and look at the babies. So
You know, it's so funny that, you know, we as being paranormal investigators and over the years doing so many investigations of other locations, but we still have your bloody house to investigate.
Well, yeah. When are you coming over?
Let me pack my bags. I'll be right there. You buying my ticket?
Yeah, I'll buy you a ticket.
Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad somebody will.
I'm rich, according to my granddaughter. No, my nanny's rich. She tells everyone, even the teachers at school, her grandmother is rich.
Well,
but, yeah, it's a haunted house. It's a lovely haunted house. I've got a lovely set of ghosts in here, and you know, it must be the most haunted house in Britain, and I don't care what anyone says. The house in Pontefract has got nothing on Glenantai. Nothing.
Well, we're definitely going to have to do something about that someday. I got some ideas about that. We'll have to discuss it later in the week on a few things maybe we can do. Do some promotions for Paranormal UK Radio.
Oh, yeah. Okay, then. You're going to put me to work, aren't you?
Yeah,
Yes.
Well, you and me. It's all
All
work
right.
for me. All work and no play makes Mark a dull boy.
Yeah. And guess what, Mark?
What?
My 2 books are back out.
They are?
Yes, they're out there, people. They're out there. Don't ask me the names and titles of them because I've just forgotten.
That's where I come in.
That's an age thing as well.
As your manager, that's where I come in. So, you know, we have the titles have altered slightly to throw off some of the negativity that one stalker had given in the past. But your 2 novels, we have A Psychic Spy Recruited, which is the first novel in the Psychic Spy series, and of course, Where Demons Dwell. Your where paranormal horror novel. So those are back.
Set in the beautiful, idyllic coastal town of Amalfi in Italy.
Yes. Old world charm meets old world evil.
Yeah, I'm sucking another grape, by the way, people. So I'm so sorry about that.
Well, that's what I always tell you when you irritate me. Just go suck a grape. Which is about every 5 minutes. So.
Anyway, like I said, the books are out there, and the 3rd book that's coming soon, isn't it?
Life Among the Spirits, your autobiography, is we're still re-editing it at this point in time. There's new material added to it, and that should be hopefully coming out in the next month.
And I'm working on A Spy in Paris. I'm doing it, Scott McCune. I am doing it.
The long-awaited sequel to The Psychic Spy.
By Scott McCune. He's waited so long for this novel to come out.
He's your biggest fan.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. He's a very nice fella.
He is.
Yeah.
Well, now that it's Halloween, and you, of course, living in a haunted house, and you have, mostly nicer ghosts in your house.
Yeah. I don't tolerate bad ones. You know what I'm like. I kick them out.
Yep. You tell them to sod off. So, but there are other people who have dealt with some really horrible experiences with the paranormals, and
so true.
And so that's where we want to introduce our guest for tonight. We'd like to welcome Cindy Sauer to the program. How are you, Cindy?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing
Hi,
well.
Cindy.
Just introduce you to our audience. You are an author in your own right. You have your book that came out this year, The Exorcism of Cindy Sauer. Now, this is a true story of your own paranormal experiences?
Yes, it absolutely is. The book came out in April, I believe, and everything in the book that I put in it it's not based on a true story. It's actually everything that happened to me.
It is a true story. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And this actual story was picked up by Haunting, the television program, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah, It absolutely was. In 2012, which is a year after the sort of the crescendo of everything that happened, they did pick the story up, and it aired in 2012. So
okay, but people, Go and buy the book first.
Yes, the book has got it's a lot more detailed than the show is. You know, they have to condense everything down into 40 minutes or so.
That's right. And most of the stuff ends up on the cutting room floor anyway.
Yeah, it does. I mean, they've got to they've got to be able to tell a story in a certain amount of time and do the story justice. So they did a good job. But there was so much more that wasn't put in or that I couldn't add, and some things that weren't. I just chose not to make a part of it. So the book goes in much more detail. It really does.
Well, Cindy, before we get into the story of the book, let's talk a little bit about your background, because it seems like you've had some experiences with the paranormal from a very early age.
I did. I actually, the first experience that I can recall happened around the age of 4 or 5. And my sister and myself, my older sister, we were sleeping one night, and my sister woke me up, actually. Initially, she was kind of prodding me and, shaking me. She wouldn't speak. She just pointed. And I woke up and looked, and at the foot of our bed, that we had a chair, and the chair was facing toward the bed, and it was up against the wall. And my great-grandmother was sitting in the chair. The only problem was she had passed away months earlier. And there she sat in the chair. So that was my very first experience. At the time, I didn't really know, what was going on. At that age, I'm not really quite sure I understood, what the spirit world or what spirits were. I just knew that was my great-grandmother, and she was not supposed to be there. So it was a pretty terrifying experience.
I was going to say, did she frighten you?
It did scare me. I remember it to this day. It did. It terrified me. I was very scared. We were both scared. We covered our heads up, and we stayed that way till we fell asleep. So it was pretty scary. It was scary for us.
Yeah. I know that feeling. I lived in a house in London where an old lady used to haunt the house, and she actually took a shining to my father. Mm-hmm. She kind of liked him. But her name was Mrs. Hyland, and I came in from clubbing it one night, as you do. Mm-hmm. I hadn't had a lot to drink because I'm allergic to alcohol, but I came in from clubbing it, and I lay in bed and looked down at the bottom of my bed, and there she's standing at the bottom of my bed staring at me. So, it didn't work. I don't get frightened of these things.
And for our listeners, that was not a demonic scream. That was Pickles, Pee-wee, the Pope Parrot.
Yeah, sorry about that. Mark will explain to you. I am sharing a room with him at the moment.
Now, we will say, Cindy, we have had some strange noises legitimately come over when we've done the show a few times. But when I know that it's either Pickles or our mascot, Gertie, the paranormal pup, making noises, we'll make sure to let everybody know that so that nobody thinks that, we're being plagued by the paranormal during our show.
Okay. I'm sitting here eating grapes right next to a parrot. What do you reckon's going to happen?
He's going, where's mine?
I've just given him one to keep him quiet. I think he's put it in his water dish.
So Cindy, when you saw this apparition, how long was it? This is the investigator in me. How long did you see it for? Did it just vanish, or did you feel anything from it?
She was under the covers, Mark.
Yes, we were scared. It was an immediate thing. I think she was more in shock. She saw it longer than I did, and we covered our heads up, and we stayed that way till we went to sleep. I didn't peek out to see if she was gone. I remember falling asleep, and then when I woke up, it was morning. It was only for a few seconds, but it was long enough to know that that's who it was, and to see that she had on the actual dress or gown, maybe, that she had been buried in. And she had that on, and she almost had, it was almost like this this bluish green, almost glow around her.
Really?
So Yes, it absolutely was. But she was, she wasn't transparent. She was very solid, but sort of an ethereal glow about her. So, but it was still scary. I guess I didn't know anything being that small. So, it was pretty terrifying.
I know it was a long time
Yeah.
ago, but do you feel,
Yes.
did she have any kind of expression on her face, or did you feel any kind of emotion coming from her, or were you just too frightened by it at the moment and just dove under the covers?
I think the thing that really kind of stuck with me, even after this amount of time, was the fact that her face, it was almost a deadpan expression. And that's what was I think that's the thing that scared me the most, is there was no smile, I think now looking back that, she was maybe there to comfort us. But at the time, it was terrifying. There was no expression at all.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's very much like Mrs. Hyland at the bottom of my bed. Maybe I saw your granny.
Yeah.
But no,
you don't
just staring.
Yes. Yeah, and it's creepy when anyone just has a deadpan stare, and they're looking at you. It's it'll kind of creep you out anyway.
Yeah,
so,
I like doing that in real life.
Yeah.
It does scare the shite out of some people, especially with me around.
Yeah.
Good, what's she going to do now?
Like, oh God, here she goes again.
So did you have any other experiences after that then, Cindy?
I did. I think that was, sort of a turning point for me in my life. I continued to have experiences. I had another, they started to kind of turn in a different direction.
Okay.
And the second one that I recall was very terrifying. It was my sister and myself again. And when we first moved into the house that we lived in, my grandparents lived there too, so we shared a house. We had built two sides onto it.
Yeah.
At my second experience happened in the newer side of the house, which was where my parents and my sisters and brother lived. And we had added on, so we had a new room. So we moved, over onto that side. My sister and myself did. And there was one night when we were kind of being rowdy. Two little girls will do that, and we were being
definitely.
loud.
I know. I had three of them at the weekend.
Yeah. And so we got scolded, and my dad shut the door, and it was very dark. We lived in a very rural area, so there were no street lights outside, and it was dark. So you're a kid, you're afraid of the dark, and I was about 7 or 8 at this time, and I had turned over, facing away from my sister, so my back was turned to her, and she was closer to the door, and she was on her side of the bed, laying on her back. Well, I had turned over to whisper something to her because we were not asleep yet and still kind of giggling and, playing around. But when I turned over to look at her, her face had completely changed. And this was in a very dark room, and I still saw her face. And it almost gave off its own glow again with this weird glow. And it was sort of a green, kind of a I don't know, like a weird green color.
Like a hazy color.
Yes. And it had, her face was extended. It was long, elongated. Her eyes were turned up. Her nostrils were flared. Her mouth was in this huge grin. It was just her face. It looked wrong. It was wrinkled. It was not her. There was this
something morphed over her then.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. That's the only thing I could think of, and it completely terrified me. And I started to scream. I was very upset. My dad came in the room. No one believed me. The door got shut again, and we had to go to sleep. But I was just terrified. And just things, throughout my life from there were not so positive with pertaining to the paranormal. As when I got older and I was a teenager, my grandfather got very sick, and he was in the hospital. And during that time, my mother and my aunts decided that it might be a good idea because my grandfather was very much the glue that held the family together.
Yeah.
So him not being there was very devastating. And nobody knew what to do. So my mother and her sister decided it might be a good idea to try to contact him, even though he was in a vegetative state, to try to contact him via a Ouija board or a spirit board, and started to do spells, things like that, to try to contact him. And they ordered a spirit board, not the square kind that the typical Ouija board that you see, but this thing was round and wooden, and it had these odd symbols on it. And
yeah.
So they started to do things with that. They were teaching us things like automatic writing. And as young, we were younger. I was a teenager, but you think, this is kind of fun and games.
This is your parents doing this, teaching you automatic writing and...
Yeah, it was.
So they obviously were into the paranormal.
I don't really. It was a part of our lives for, it wasn't something that was really spoken about, but it was here and there, but it wasn't called that. I don't really know. I'm not sure what they referred to it as. And, we grew up we went to church. We were a Christian family. And yet here these things would pop up. And, this is the tip of the odd iceberg with my family. But they did this, and bad things started to happen. They thought they were speaking to my grandfather. I did not. I really felt like something was wrong, pretty quickly. And they had all us kids doing it. And as far as we were concerned, it really didn't work, and it was a fun game. As far as the auto writing and the attempts to astral project, these kind of things, they were just doing these things normally. I don't think we grasped what was happening.
Well, your parents obviously had a knowledge of all this.
My aunt did, and she kind of passed that knowledge on to, she started to get my mother into it. And I think my grandfather being sick is what sort of pushed her and my aunt further into this. So, things that were not good then. And things started to happen. Just, it's like a domino effect. And all these things started happening. My grandfather did pass away. There were other deaths in the house too. I had a nephew a few years after that who died in the house. So it's things like this have been sort of, they've happened, throughout my life. And you don't really put the big picture together, you don't you take these things, you compartmentalize these things and never really take them and shove them together. And I came to a place where I was forced to have to do that, and I had to start putting these things together, and it was a pretty terrifying picture once you did that,
Yeah.
Cindy, let me ask you a question. Do you feel that you are sensitive?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I have been for a while. It's not, I don't normally, see things visually. I do get things. I hear things, just kind of a third eye thing. I think I'm not really sure because I haven't, delved into it. I'm actually kind of scares me to get into it because I'm afraid of these other things, and so I don't push it. I try not to.
Yeah, well, it's best if you're frightened of something, don't go near it. Don't bother with it, okay? And also, because of what's happened to you in the past, you've got like a handwritten sign across your head, "Come get me." So don't.
Yeah, I figured as much. I really did.
Yeah, don't bother. Don't bother enticing anything into your life or in any way whatsoever.
No, and I don't. That's one thing I absolutely do not do. I have to do things most people don't. You know, I keep holy water on my kitchen counter and frankincense and myrrh. I wear a rosary a lot, and I go through a lot of them because they break continuously. So I wear them a lot. There are things that I just do on a regular basis that most people probably don't, and I've just sort of accepted it that's going to be part of my life, from here on out. So.
Well, you also, when you in adulthood, you also, when I was looking at your bio, you also did your own paranormal investigations, correct?
We did, and it was very amateur. It was my brother, my friend, and myself, and it consisted of a digital camera when those things were, they were new, and ourselves, and we would go to different graveyards, things like that in our area. That was it. That's kind of what we did. So it was before the shows on TV, and that sort of made it a big thing. And it was just something, we were so curious about because we had experienced things that, I guess I tried to find sort of a safe way to explore it. One thing I never did is I avoided anything to do with demons, demonology, lists of demon names. I avoided that completely because it was scary. And I just didn't accept that as part of this whole paranormal thing. To me, if you didn't acknowledge that, then no harm, no foul, you were fine. So, it was very amateur investigating. It wasn't anything on any great scale. And,
more like just a hobby, yeah?
Yeah, it definitely was just a hobby. It was something that,
Inquisitive.
and it kind of a bonding experience for us. It was something that not many people did back then. At least you didn't hear of it. So, we kind of did it on our own and kept it a secret. My husband at the time, he would, he would laugh at me and it's like, you're crazy. You're going to bring something home with you and things like that. But, he was fine with it. And we enjoyed coming home and looking at our pictures and analyzing them, things like that. So it was very much a hobby. And I never experienced anything at all, really. I mean, I had some pictures that were like interesting, but nothing to speak of. It wasn't anything that led me to see anything or to experience anything that was negative.
Yeah, so, both myself and Mark, we frequented many a graveyard in the past.
Yeah, I kind of like it. It's kind of a peaceful place.
Oh, it's very peaceful.
Yeah, Mark went investigating. I went treasure hunting. I took a spade.
Yes.
Grave robbing on the side.
I was 15.
Uh-huh.
A load of us girls from school decided to go and dig a few up because we'd had a lesson where the teacher had said about in the Victorian days and earlier that they got buried with their jewellery and things like that. So we decided to go treasure hunting.
You were incorrigible as a child.
Yeah, no, but we got bored, so we jumped into the old girls' garden next door to the graveyard and we pinched all her apples. And the following day, we got in trouble with the headmistress because she had reported us scrumping her apples. But we made quite a bit of money out of them apples. We stripped the tree.
So you didn't dig anything up, huh?
No, we got bored with it. The ground was just too hard, It was winter. No, it wasn't winter. It was about this time of the year, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe a bit earlier.
The graves are a lot deeper than you think, too. So.
Yeah, well, we didn't realise they'd be 6 foot down, did we? We thought they'd just be under the first layer of dirt.
Yeah, if they were, then you would have smelled them out.
Sorry, people, but I am an evil bitch at times.
That's you, all right. So anyway,
I'll get some complaints now.
So, well, during this time, before you got into the events that you chronicle in your book, in adulthood, did you have many other types of paranormal experiences? Even though you didn't really experience anything in the graveyard, were you picking up or sensing other things around you? And if so, how did you pick up on it?
When I was married, there were things that would happen here and there that, just normal stuff. You may see a shadow out of your peripheral vision, or, just simple stuff. Something got moved and you're not sure how. A couple times even, my husband or one of my kids would say they saw something, or, one time my husband said that he felt something run across the bed. Just stuff like that. And of course, I'm going to go in with my camera and start taking pictures. And, but it was simple things. It wasn't anything for a long time. It wasn't anything too bad. There was a time when, I started to go through, a pretty deep, depression, I guess you'd say. I was later diagnosed with PTSD, but I went through a very difficult period where I went to see to speak to someone, to see a counselor, and I was diagnosed first with everything under the sun. They said ADD, they said bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, just a myriad of things that they were trying to medicate me for. And I eventually just stopped taking the medication because it made it worse. And I know there was a point where, I would hear my grandmother call who had passed away, or my grandfather. I'd hear their voices. And there were times when I would hear, in my head, I'd hear like 1,000 somethings. I don't know what, just talking, whispering all at the same time. And I would end up on the floor.
Did that sound like being inside a wasp's or a bee nest? Which,
Yes, it did.
Like that, like you were you were inside a actual bee's nest. Yeah. All this going, yeah.
Yeah, and it just, you can't hear anything or pinpoint anything. It's very, very overwhelming, and it's terrifying, and you feel like you're just going to lose your mind. And I was just on a fetal position on the floor, just covering my ears, but that doesn't help, and I would have these moments where I couldn't, it was hard to function because this stuff was just very oppressive. And I would come out of it, but, the medication didn't help. Like I said, I eventually stopped taking the medication altogether. And, kid, hang on. Yeah, no, I want to go outside. No, going out. Sorry.
And that was not my parrot, people.
Yep.
No.
And it was not a ghostly child.
No, it was not ghostly. He's 4 years old and he's full of energy. So
they usually are.
Oh man. Oh, boys. I don't know what to do with boys. Girls, I can handle. Boys, I don't know. I'm not good with that yet. But I didn't, I didn't have a lot of negative external experiences during this time. It was very much, there were some internal things, like I said, and, just kind of typical stuff. I guess it's typical if you have experienced paranormal activity, paranormal things, then it's typical, but nothing out of the ordinary or very negative other than, the internal stuff. So it was pretty quiet for several years. And it wasn't until, there was a rapid decline in just everything in my life that things really started to get bad. And that was right before and when my husband passed away. And so that's when things, really took a turn.
Do you feel that your husband...
Sorry, Mark.
Okay. Go ahead, Irene.
I was going to say, so it actually started before your husband took his own life.
It did. It did. I saw...
Well, it was paranormal, yeah?
Yeah. There were a few times during our marriage that I saw it. I don't speak about those things in my book. I haven't really spoken about those things very often. But there were things that happened with him. There were some incidents where he wasn't himself, or he didn't act like himself or look like himself. So, he struggled with alcoholism and some other things that were, childhood issues. So sometimes he had a very hard time. And at the time of his death, he was sober, but he did still exhibit some of the signs of an alcoholic, and he was going downhill pretty quickly. And I was very concerned about that, and that prompted me to separate from him. And so for a few months we were separated, and he got very much worse. It took a toll on him, and he began to deteriorate physically, mentally, emotionally. And there was a point before he died that he didn't look like himself at all. And in fact, he smelled dead already. And I don't know if it was just me, but he looked like a walking corpse, and he smelled like one. And it was extremely...
Did he have an earthy smell to him?
It was like rot. It was very much like a putrid...
So really,
Yes.
I would say that he had an attachment.
I think he did.
Well, let me ask this then, Cindy. If when the problem started, the home that you were in together, how long were you in that home before things started to happen?
We were the first people to live in that home, and we had been there for 10 years before everything started to change. And it was a difficult 10 years. It was not easy. Our relationship it had its ups and downs, and we had our struggles. So,
how long were you together before moving into that house?
We were together 13 years.
Okay, so a couple of years before then. And were those times as difficult? And again, I'm not trying to get personal. There's a point to all this.
They were. They were difficult. From the get-go, they were tough.
Mm-hmm.
And his struggles were they affected everybody, and it was hard. He had a lot of problems, and I was very convinced that I could help him. So it's almost like taking two very scary and dark past and shoving them together, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it was tough. It was difficult, but we pushed through a lot. And I was very convinced that I could help him and help save him up until that time when I just didn't feel like it was safe anymore.
I can understand and sympathize exactly with what you've been through. I've been in similar situations. You think you can help somebody, but when they mentally and emotionally deteriorate, there's really not much you can do if they're not willing to help themselves. Now, do you feel that anything that was happening on the paranormal side at that time, do you feel anything had to do with the house or the land where you were living? Or do you feel like this is something that came in, like Irene said, possibly was attached to him or even attached to yourself, or just came in when maybe it sensed that there was these emotional issues?
I think that I don't think it was the land or the home. I really feel like I struggle with what scares me with this, and I just, being candid about the whole thing, is what scares me is I'm always afraid when I look back that whatever maybe has followed me got to him, and that's difficult for me.
And that was exactly what I didn't want to say to you.
Yeah, I know. And believe me, all these things I've gone through these in my head over and over and over. And
I'm glad you brought it up and I didn't have to.
Yeah. But no, you know what? I'm here to talk about things, and I'm here to I mean, it is what it is. You know, I mean, it's not a good situation. It's scary, but I can't, you know, you can't change it. You can't pretend and sugarcoat it. You just can't.
You know, at the same time, you know, it's not your fault, because what, you know, and what you and what other people out there need to understand is we just have no control sometimes when we're dealing with these external energies or entities, whatever you want to think of them as. And it's not as simple as thinking, oh, it's a ghost or it's a demon or it's some kind of attachment. You know, there's so much that we still need to learn, and we're trying to learn about our reality and what's happening in the world around us. So, you know, if something was attracted to you because of the fact that you were sensitive, you know, again, it's not your fault. It's like, you know, it's not somebody's fault that they get a cancer or something. You know, it's if something is going to happen, it's going to happen. And, you know, so don't blame yourself for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, I've carried a lot of guilt, you know, that's one of the many things that, it's been hard, but it's something that you do have to come to terms with that, and, realize that you haven't done something, you know, consciously or purposefully to hurt people.
Well, it's like Irene and we've mentioned on our show many times in the past that when sometimes if you're dealing with some of these attachments that can be negative, and Irene, you can correct me on this, you know, it's like you're mostly dealing with a parasite. It's feeding off of certain types of negative energy. Maybe it's attracted to you because it can sense your energy. Your light is a little bit brighter than everybody else around it because you are sensitive. With your husband, you know, maybe it sensed some of the negativity, the problems in his life, and sometimes that's what these things feed on. Not necessarily that they're evil, but if they thrive on negative energy, they create more havoc to have that negative energy to feed. It's like picking up a mosquito. You know, it's there to suck your blood. You don't like it, you'll kill the little bastard if you see him. But it's also, you know, it's doing what it does, you know, regardless of how you feel about it.
The way I see this is whatever was, like Mark says, whatever this attachment was that led your husband to maybe do what he did in the end was not what came after. Your husband, maybe doing what he did opened up a portal to release something else.
You know,
and that's what you got attacked with.
Yeah, that makes sense. That actually does make sense.
And
I hadn't thought about that. I don't know why I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah, see, tragic events sometimes, you know, tragic deaths and one thing or another. This is what happens. It will open up a portal and in comes the shite from somewhere else. Excuse the language, everybody, but that's exactly what it is.
It is.
Absolutely. And of course, something got through and saw your light. Obviously, you're a sensitive, you're a clairaudient for a start. You're talking about asking you about the bee's nest sound.
Yes.
Okay, when you were down and everything. That is what we hear sometimes, and I hear quite often when I'm out on an investigation and I'm in a place that's absolutely infested with stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, it's yeah, and it's.
But being clairaudient and being depressed, you more than likely thought it was your mind. It wasn't your mind. It was the fact that you were depressed that enhanced this, because you were not in your own own bubbly self.
Could it also be, and this is a question for Irene, Could it also be that if possibly this negative type of attachment, again, because it feeds off of negative energy, could have been helping to cause her depression and, foster this kind of thing because it keeps feeding off of it?
Yeah, I'd done a case in London, Reigate, London, and it was about this young couple with a baby was having problems in the house. It turned out that they'd bought the house off an old lady. Now, when she was younger, she had a daughter that started to get mental problems, and of course it was scorned on in them days. You didn't go and get help for it. And you just kept them either shut away or drugged up sort of thing, rather than go and get proper medical help for it. And that's what they done with this young girl back in the 60s. And, but what happened was somebody else that had the house previous had been a depressive, and they'd hung themselves, they committed suicide.
Yeah.
They were pushing this young girl to do the same. In the end, this young girl, what she did is she climbed into the attic and tied a rope round the beam and then jumped through the attic hatch, hung herself at the top of the stairs.
Oh, no.
And, of course, that's what all the problem was in the house. So, once we cleared that, we cleared the other thing that was causing problems as well that was still hanging around. So,
oh, my gosh.
And that's how these things
Wow.
work, is they cause, it's exactly it, they cause problems. And with that causing problems, emotional turmoil, depression, people and sensitive people can pick up on these negative emotions, and then it could throw you into a depression. It can cause, like your husband, make things, he already had a problem in something he was dealing with, and these things can work on that to make things even worse. And sometimes when you talk to these so-called demonologists, people who are a little too focused on quote-unquote demons, they say, well, the ultimate goal is to have the person kill themselves. And it's like, no. These things, these things are
not necessarily, because you're taking away their
food source. They're just doing what they do to continue to feed and create a situation where the negative energy keeps flowing, and it's just a natural, that person will keep going down, down, and down until eventually they break, they do commit suicide, or they get the hell out of that situation. Let's say if it's a haunted house location rather than an attachment. If people get out of the house, we've interviewed a lot of people who've dealt with really extreme negative hauntings of locations in the past. There's the Sally House haunting with Debbie and Tony Pickman, and that was definitely the house, and yet still they're affected by it to this day with things still kind of attached to Tony, but he keeps it at bay. But it was mostly location based. There's cases that I've dealt with here in New Jersey, definitely location based. This whole neighborhood had this negative type of energy that was affecting several homes in the area, and was causing personality changes and people to really get into bad funks and depression and freaking out. Yet once they got away from the house and the property, boom, they were perfectly fine.
Well, this is it. If somebody's down, or they're an alcoholic, or they're on drugs, their defenses are down anyway, so they're an easy target. Let's face it.
Yeah.
And as you were talking, Mark, about a whole neighborhood, do you know what a terrace of houses are? A terrace of houses in the UK are all houses joined together along the road. They're all joined together. I had to chase a bum pincher from one house to another once to get rid of him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he used to go and pinch all the women's bums all along this row of houses. And he was becoming such a pain in the arse, I was going to say, that he had to be sorted out. He even pinched my bum at one time. I was going from one house to the other to catch this bugger.
That's funny.
I've had some funny ones, I tell you.
Well, I know, Cindy, we kind of took a detour there. That, you know, not that we're trying to take away from your story, but it's more of like to delve more deeper into the actual experiences and what people like yourself have gone through, you know, to have a better understanding. It's one thing to hear of somebody having a scary experience, and it's another thing of, as investigators, taking a deeper look at it, analyzing it, and trying to get more to the root of the matter.
Absolutely.
So that being said, when did things really start to go south for you, and how did that manifest?
You know, at the time of his death, we were not living at the house. The kids and myself were living up the street. And we, you know, after he did die, we left town for a few months. But it came to a point to where I had to decide, you know, what I was going to do with the house. The house was paid for. My children had grown up in the house. As much as I didn't want to, I really didn't have an option but to go back. So, you know, it was only a few months later, and I knew that we had to go back. You know, their friends were there. That's where they went to school. The house, like I said, it was paid for. So financially, it made sense. And for the kids, it made sense. And as much as I hated it, I knew I needed to do it. So, you know, I cleaned up things before I moved the kids back in, but I did, you know, decided to go back. It was, I don't know, it was around a year or so later when things really started to be a problem. And, you know, we're still really deep in grief at that point. And, you know, things happened, like I got grabbed, actually. I was bending over and something grabbed me on the behind really hard, forcefully. And, you know, turn around and nobody's there. Of course, there's no one else in the house anyway but the kids and me. And so it was concerning. And that same time, I went to pick up the other kids from school. My niece, who was a teenager at the time, stayed at the house. When I come back home, she's standing outside and she's in a panic. There was a Bible that was on a chest in the dining room beside his ashes, my husband's ashes, and it flew across the room and pages tore out of it. So, you know, these sort of things started to happen. I was in a place mentally where, you know, I was still grieving. So even at that point, I did not want it to be him. But logically, I thought, okay, what is he doing? Like, is it him? What does he want? You know, is he angry at me? You know, that was a big thing, is I thought he's very mad at me. So that sort of, you know, where my thinking went. And I sort of put it on the back burner. I didn't really know how to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And it was me and the kids. There's so much you have to do, you know, and you're taking care of kids and they've lost their dad. So I don't think I had the capacity to deal with it. So I just kind of shoved it back, you know, and didn't really look at it for what it was. You know, a lot of people who have negative experiences, it's like, why didn't you get help when this happened? But when you're in the situation, it's completely different. First of all, you don't want to tell people these things because people are going to look at you like you're crazy or you're grieving. You know, it's to be expected that you're going to, you know, have some problems and suffer and, you know, not do well.
And half the time you think it's your own imagination, don't you?
I went down that road a million times thinking, okay, you know, or the kids really didn't see that. This really didn't happen. Maybe I leaned up against the wall or, you know, maybe there was a breeze. You very much, it's funny as human beings how were able to sort of play dumb, really. I mean,
Yeah.
you become ignorant to it, and you're able to ignore it. It's almost like you shut that part of yourself off so that you don't have to deal with it. And so
Yeah,
that's
that's true.
what I did.
Well, when this started happening, I mean, you and your sister saw that vision of your deceased great grandmother when you were young, and then you and your brother, of course, do some amateur paranormal investigation. Were you able to discuss your situation with your family, since it seems like sounds like they'd be open to understanding what you're going through?
You know, when my husband did die, it really, you know, grief it does things to people. And I really lost a lot of family when this happened. I didn't really have anybody I could talk to. Not my family even. There were a few people, you know, like my brother. I wanted to talk to him, but he was grieving. These people were all still extremely hurt because this man that was a part of their lives for so long decided to kill himself. And people need a scapegoat when things like this happen, because they can't make sense of it. I couldn't. I know they couldn't. And a lot of them didn't talk to me anymore. So I was pretty isolated. There were a few people who were friends, but again, I'm not sure that they could have grasped it. My niece, she was there and experienced some things, but there weren't really many people I could talk to about it. So, I
can tell you, and I think I can talk for Irene too, within the last 2 years, both of us have lost very close, family members. So
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from in terms of the grief, especially the grief having you do things that you probably normally wouldn't do. And I know I did them. And, it caused a lot of hurt and pain in my own family. And, when you're close, or when that person has a big effect on you, grief is a powerful thing, and dealing with it, it doesn't just go away in a couple of months. It can stay with you for a long time. It's been 2 years and I'm still, grieving my brother.
Absolutely. It does. It's a strange thing. And then when you couple it with the fact that they did this of their own free will, and it's, the cycle of grief, it's all mixed up, and it just repeats itself in all these weird ways. And there's no closure ever, there's no resolving it. So you just have to learn to sort of live with it. Suicide is it's almost like a demon unto itself. Honestly, it's this thing that just grows when it happens, and it has this ripple effect that you're not sure how long it's going to last, or where it's going to go. It was really, especially for it to be someone who has been a part of your life since you were so young, every day.
Mm-hmm.
For that to happen, it's confusing, because you can't understand why this person would choose to do that. So yeah, and I think, as bad as I felt terrible for everybody else that they had to deal with this too. I felt horrible for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept a lot of this to myself, and I didn't really think people were going to believe me. I can't see how they would. I mean, I just didn't, I did keep a lot of it to myself.
Now, when this thing, it threw a Bible across the room and pages tore out, I'm just curious, did you happen to notice what pages tore out? Was there possibly some kind of significance to what came out, or did you notice at the time?
I did not. I put them back in the Bible, and I set the Bible back in its place.
Okay.
I did not even open it again. Again, I was really, really trying to just, I didn't want it to be happening. So I was very much in denial, and I didn't, I tried to go about life as normally as I possibly could. And things just got, they just kept happening. And this, I think, happened maybe in maybe April or May that this happened. And that was in 2010. And so progressively it started to get worse. There were, a few months here and there when things wouldn't happen. But then you go up into 2011, and that's when it started to get really bad. That's when it wasn't just religious items then. That's when I would hear things more. I would see shadows. My daughter actually saw her father outside, and it terrified her. So, she was a complete mess. And
sorry, Cindy. Do you think she actually saw her father, or do you think it was something taking on the image of her father?
It was not him. It was not him. I knew immediately that it wasn't him. She was so terrified, and I went outside, in this frustration and anger to try to confront him and wonder, how could you do this? And I was very angry, and I yelled and was just upset. And
but there was nothing outside.
No, there was nothing there. But this lug nut from a tire came out of thin air. It came out of nowhere, and it just whizzed by my head. It was inches away from my head. I heard it go by my ear. I felt it, and it landed behind me somewhere in the grass. And he used to work on cars. He was a mechanic, and that was out by his old shop. And I shut up. I didn't say another word, and I just, I went back inside. And I knew that he would never do that to her unless he had died and turned into something completely horrible, which I didn't think that could happen. I knew that couldn't have been him.
I get the impression that your own intuition, your own sensitivity is also able to pick up on the energy, even on a subconscious level, which is why you're able to determine it wasn't him. Yeah,
it did not feel like him at all. And even after that, I still, she saw something too in her room. She visually sees things a lot. She saw something, and it completely went into a panic again. She had a meltdown. She was napping during the day, and she woke up and she saw this thing standing at the foot of her bed, and it was a monster. And she was a mess. We got up, we left the house, and we didn't come back until late that night. We stayed at a friend's for as long as we could until they went to bed. I didn't tell them anything because I didn't know what to tell them. So I finally went home with the kids and, had to go in the house, and I sat up all night. I stayed on the couch all night, and she stayed there, and the other kids stayed in my bed, and I just stayed up all night because I didn't know what else to do. And
I hear this so many times from people that they don't know what to do. They don't know which way to turn. They don't tell anybody because they know that they're not going to be believed and things. And it plays out over a period of time. And the only time they ever come or seek help is when it gets to the point where they can't take it anymore. Like one family I had ended up sleeping in their car all night.
Yeah. I thought about that on more than one occasion.
Yeah.
I did. And it was tough when those things would happen, but what got really tough is when it turned from just external to also internal.
To possession.
And, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it got pretty bad, and it was in 2011 around September when it got really bad.
Yeah. So it took possession of you, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it did. It's funny because the way that it happened was we went to there was a house that I used to really think about a lot, right outside of the town that I lived in. And I was completely obsessed with this house. It was beautiful and old and abandoned. And I found it one time and could not find it again. And one day when I was looking around for rentals, I drove down this street and stopped at the stop sign, and there the house was across the street at the end of this street. And I made up my mind that we were going to get in there and we were going to look around. And so we did that on September 29th. We went in during the day to see.
Sorry, Cindy. This was you and a friend, yes?
Yeah, it was. And we went in to kind of get the lay of the house, during the day and daylight hours. It was really odd. It was I saw something in the basement when I'd opened up the door to the basement, and I couldn't really go up in the attic. It was just an odd feeling. So we went back that night, and I was very uncomfortable, and I couldn't even go in the house that night. I couldn't. But it ended up that whatever happened. It happened quickly. It was scary. It was strange, and that's when I suffered my first attack, right after we left that house. And
so do you think that whatever was at your house previous followed you to the other house, and that's what you saw in the basement? Or do you think it was something else that was in the basement that took over you?
I think it was something else in the basement.
And that
what I witnessed outside, I'm not sure. There are things that I haven't really put together yet.
Yeah.
We thought we didn't make it inside the house. We thought we heard a car pull into the driveway. So we went back around the side of the house where we were parked, and I was very on edge. It was everything around, the energy was just on fire. It was crazy. There were things that were darting around, just all around, and you could feel it. It was real. It was like a big vortex of energy almost. It was just moving around. It was strange. And then
was this your dream house, or was this the house you live in?
That was the house that we went to, the one that I was obsessed with. Yeah.
That's more than likely why it stayed empty so long then.
Yeah. I've actually looked into it too, with that house. So I do know that there was more to that house than just me going there, but that's when it happened. The thing is, the energy got so intense that it physically manipulated things. The trees behind me started to crack, making noises like limbs were falling. And I turn around and there's something coming through these trees, and it's big. It's very, very big, and it comes straight at me. And I tried to get in the car, but I did not make it in the car before it did get to me. And it is like being hit by a train, as far as energy goes. And this thing was behind me, on my shoulder, just screaming, just screaming at me. And I was on the floor of the car, almost as far down as I could get, with my hands over my ears. And we stopped at the bottom of the driveway after we pulled off, and to just kind of get our bearings. And I just asked him to please pray. And that's when my body, I lost it. I don't know, just everything. And it's spotty because, you have some lapses as far as just what you remember.
Yeah.
but that was the beginning, I guess, of my first attack was then. And I felt like it felt like something was trying to pull me out of the car and to pull me into that house and down into the basement. That's just what I felt inside of me. And it completely took me over. We left, and it just stopped. As soon as it started, it stopped. We left, and we had to pull off a few blocks after that. We had to pull off into a parking lot. And I was very uneasy. I was very agitated. And we pulled in, and I got out of the car, and I was pacing back and forth, and I kept looking back toward where the house was, and saying things that didn't make any sense. And the attack continued, and it got really bad. It got to the point to where I was not able to breathe. I couldn't talk. I was making these sounds. These sounds were coming out of me. And I knew, I heard this hiss just come out of my body. And I knew that this was bad. I knew it was bad. I'm not sure how long the whole thing lasted. He was trying to get me to pray and to say, to call on Jesus. And I couldn't. And it took a very long time before I was able to. When I finally did, I just kind of sank down into the car again. And we finally got home, and it was around daylight, and I was exhausted. I was completely drained.
I can only say thank God somebody was with you, because otherwise you more than likely would have ended up down in that basement.
I would have. I know I would have. And I felt every horrible thing you could feel that morning, every negative feeling all wrapped into one, and that was just down in my gut. It was just bad. And I'm thinking, okay, so this happened. It was horrible. It took me several days to recover, but you're thinking isolated incident, This is something that happened, and it was at this house, and it's not, we made a pact never to go near the house. I'm not going to go near the house. And that's what I said. But I had to go past this area. I didn't have a choice. And so there were times when I would think about it a lot. But I never went back. But things started happening at the house too, with me. And I started to suffer attacks at home. So that's when I knew that it was there too. And when things just started to get progressively worse. And
you see, to me, you are. I hate the bloody word. You're a very strong medium, but you're not trained. You haven't been trained on how to control or close it down. When you've had at this particular time, you were wide open. So
I was. And it was bad. It was very bad, but it did get worse. And it started to really take over. It was external and internal. We would hear scratching in the walls and growls from the corner, and knocks on the door, knocks everywhere. I'd see these weird balls of mist. They were almost like a, I don't know, like a weird color. They weren't quite white. They weren't, they were kind of an off brownish white. These big like balls of something, and they would go by the window. They would just float by the window. There's of course a lot. These big ones that would walk from room to room. My daughter would see them. I would have at night. I would lay in the bed, and it was very hard to sleep at that point, between nightmares and hearing things in my room. And I could tell when these things were standing by the bed, and they would stand there right by the bed all night. They would just stand there. Sometimes I could hear them. Sometimes I couldn't, but I knew they were there, and they would just stand there. Sometimes they would touch me. I would have bruises and scratches on my neck, my legs, my arms, sometimes my torso. And it just started to spiral. I got to where I couldn't eat very well. I couldn't sleep very well. And
so it sounds like whatever the main player was, he had his minions or whatever around him, and you had an infestation.
Yeah,
in the house.
Yes, that's exactly what it turned into. That's what happened, and the attacks got worse. I could feel these things kind of embedding in me more and more. It just they got more control, and they got more pieces of me, and it just got more frequent, and just the attacks, the thoughts, the voices, the things that would happen outside. The dryer, the door would open and shut rapidly, several times. The cabinets, of course, would open and close. They would all just open at one time, and they would all be open. And it was terrifying. You'd hear the growls, but you would hear your name, and it was horrible because it wasn't like a human. It was something saying your name. Things that were just, they were terrifying. I would have objects move. I'd watch them move, and they would just move different things. It was, it always kept you off center. It always kept you on edge and anxious and wondering what the heck was going to happen next, what was going to occur. And it got to the point to where it wasn't just when I was at home, it was when I was off too. So it didn't matter where I was. It didn't care.
Hang on. What's that?
It's probably my child again.
It sounded like a growl / scream. Was it your child? Was he running around?
That would be the 4-year-old.
Okay.
No, it sounded like it was in the microphone.
Now that may have been something else because he's in the living room.
Yeah, I heard it too.
Okay.
For a second I thought it was Pickles acting up again.
Oh, no, it wasn't Pickles. He's quiet.
All right. Well, we'll
stop
go.
and just check that bit, Mark.
Was it a high pitched sound?
A little bit, but
like that.
Yeah.
No, I don't know what that I don't know.
Well, that was very strange. We'll definitely have to go back and analyze that piece of audio later, but it definitely sounded like something kind of screaming in the background. I was going to blame Pickles there for a moment, Irene, but that was not Pickles. I'm used to him.
Oh, wait, are you keeping that in, Mark?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. No, it wouldn't have been Pickles. Pickles at that particular moment had one leg tucked up and his eyes were shut.
Huh.
Because as soon as I heard it, he's right next to me. So as soon as it was not him. It definitely was not him.
Nope, that's Pickles.
Yeah, that's Pickles.
Imitating the car alarm.
Yeah.
Well, Cindy, let's get back to this then, because you said that it was about this time things really started to get bad and start heating up for you.
Yeah, it did. The attacks were more frequent, and the thoughts that I had were not my own. I could still tell, if it was me or if it wasn't me at a certain point, but there was a time that came to where they were so integrated that the line between myself and these things blurred. And I'm not even sure that I was aware of it at that point, but I found myself trying to bargain with these things just to make it through some days, and I was terrified. I kept it away from my kids as much as I possibly could, to the best of my ability. My daughter she was very aware of it, and she experienced a lot of it at the time.
Yeah, I was going to ask if your children were experiencing a lot of it, or were you the main target?
I was definitely the main target. The younger kids were very much protected and kept away from it at that point. And I just tried to. I did a lot of research. I looked online, and I had looked into some paranormal teams that were not too far from me, and I found one that I thought, okay, if anything, if I need it, if I ever need it, it's there. But I didn't want to need it. I didn't want to, and I didn't want to have to reach out. Part of me knew what was happening, but a bigger part of me did not want to admit this. And I did not admit it. I didn't talk about it, even though I looked up these things and I researched them as much as I could. But then it was on Halloween, oddly enough, that things got really bad, and I knew I needed help. I suffered a pretty severe attack on Halloween. It was so bad that I knew that I had to reach out to someone. So that next day, I emailed the paranormal group, and they answered back pretty quickly. And things kind of happened pretty fast after that. They were, very interested in talking to me, and they were out within a few weeks, I do believe, to do just a preliminary once over of the house and to talk to me.
Did they find anything, Cindy, when they done the preliminary?
It was bad.
It was bad.
It was bad. I almost didn't. I left the house and almost didn't come back. I did not want to, but I did come back, and they spoke to me first and asked me, a little list of questions, talked to me, and they had a psychic with them. She kind of did a walk through the house, and they ran their meters and everything they had, set up a camera. They were talking to me, and the plan was for them to speak to me, and then I was going to leave for the night. My daughter was there, but my other kids were gone. And so they asked if they could do an EVP session with me there, and I agreed. I was nervous. I never met these people before, and I was a little on edge, but I agreed, and they were really good. They were nice. They respected me and my daughter and the home. They decided to shut the lights off and ask questions, and things just didn't. They got bad really fast. I knew these things had come in. That when they come in, they make a sound. It's almost like a bang or almost an explosion sometimes. And they would come in from over on my right where I was sitting, down from the ceiling. Yeah. And I knew it was there. I knew it was there, and it went around the room as they asked questions. It went behind them, around the room, and over to my left side. And they asked if it knew, do you know that this is not your house? This is Cindy's house. And when they asked that question is when all hell broke loose. And I suffered a very severe attack right in front of them. They flipped the lights on at some point. There was a man in front of me who had a Bible. And I think he proceeded to pray and to recite, maybe, I'm not sure. I can't quite remember. But it was bad. It was really bad. And, I'm not sure how long it lasted. It was probably only a few minutes. And it was after that one of the women asked me if she could contact a friend of hers who was a priest. And that's when I kind of had to come to terms with what was going on and accept the help. So I did. And it was a very short period of time when they scheduled this priest to come out and talk to me. And yeah, it happened. All happened pretty quickly after that. So
did when the priest came out, did anything happen when he was in the house before he started to do whatever he was going to do? Did he walk? Did he walk around the house or anything?
Not at first. He didn't. It started before he even got there.
It did. What, on that particular day?
Yeah.
Yeah, these things do know when someone's coming.
It
when they're in danger from someone.
Yeah, and it was, you know, I had only been told a minimal amount of information about it. And I told that he was coming to speak to me around 12, and I knew good and well that he was coming to do an exorcism. I already knew that. They told me that. Yeah. And I did not want it to happen. But it started before he got. I was fully taken over when he got there. Well, there were other people there too, so they brought. It was a team of people, but yeah, I was already taken over when he stepped in.
When this thing takes over you, do you remember, or can you remember exactly what was going on in your head at the time it had taken you? Was you aware that you see when mediums channel spirits, what they actually do is they stand back and allow the spirit to enter their body to do the channeling. Yeah. But they're still consciously aware. But there's were you consciously aware that this thing had control of you?
Yes, I was aware, and it's like it pushes you. The best analogy I have is like it pushes you into the back seat.
Yeah,
like
that's right. Yeah,
and there's nothing you can do. Sometimes you feel, you feel these things physically, like the things that are happening to your body. You feel sometimes you don't. I have lapses in memory as far as what happened around me because you're in this fight inside of yourself. You're trying to fight to
see, when mediums do it, they step back of their own accord to allow this thing in. But when this thing's taking you over, like you say, it's pushing you into like the back seat behind it.
Yeah.
And was your eyes open all the time when this thing was?
No, not all the time. Not all the time. Sometimes they were, and sometimes some people have said that my eyes changed. Sometimes they were just completely black. Sometimes completely white.
So it isn't a demon.
Cindy, was this team recording this when this all happened? Do they have video or audio of the attack on you and this thing entering you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they do, but it's not. It's put away, and I've not even seen it, and I can't. In good conscience, I can't let people see it because I just.
And that's understandable only because, you don't necessarily, and so people understand where we come from. It's not all about getting evidence and putting out there for the public to see. We're so beyond that these days. It's, sometimes in the public they have such a generic, rudimentary understanding of this type of phenomenon anyway. And I'm not trying to knock anybody, but people have been trained to believe a certain line of thinking that's, in my opinion, is completely wrong. And, so they'll only remember what they see in the movies and not understand what really happens with people like yourself. So I'm only asking just if, I think it's good that there was some documentation on it. I don't advocate of it ever being public, just that, it may come in handy in future, like research, or to have a better understanding to fight these things in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I do know they have it, and I do know they have it put away. And I have never seen it, and to my knowledge, it's been put up, and I trust these people. So I feel like that they will do the best thing. And these people, they didn't come through it unscathed. They had issues, and they suffered things through helping me. So, you know, I think they're just as careful as I would be about things. They were good people to want to help in such a situation and put themselves, you know, in harm's way to help me.
You were very lucky to find them.
I was very lucky to find them. It being the first group that I contacted, I was very lucky.
Yeah,
because that doesn't happen often.
No, especially with the types of groups and how many of them out there really shouldn't be doing this. Just because he watched a few episodes of Ghost Adventures doesn't mean you get to be a paranormal investigator.
I agree.
Now,
and I did a lot of, you know, I had enough knowledge on, you know, the subject and the fact that, you know, what a paranormal investigator does, that I was able to, I didn't just pick the first group that came out on the internet. I really, you know, made sure that I felt like they were reputable before I contacted them. So
good. Now, when this thing attacked you, and you know what, and I'm going to put this out there too, we're not going to get into too many details. We want people to buy the book and read your story. But I just wanted to focus on, you know, when this thing entered you and attacked you, how did it manifest? And was it being verbally communicating with the team? Was it just being violent? I mean, what was going on at this time when your own personality was pushed back?
It's very, as far as, you know, what happens with my body, it's very, I mean, it's violent. It can be, generally when it starts to happen, I can feel it. And, the first thing that'll usually happen, and it depends on which one it is, because they're different with these things, you know, they're very different.
Oh, so you've had more than one experience or more than one entity try to possess you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it would usually start with, I mean, you know, sometimes, mostly it starts with your body. You start to lose control of your body. Your movements are different. Sometimes it would start with my face, and, you know, my face would start to just change and twist, and, you know, my features my eyes would sort of close. Sometimes they would bulge. It just depended. You know, my mouth would maybe go into a really deep frown or a really, really like big smile, bigger than it should be. My body would lock up. My hands sometimes would turn into, I mean, what looked like a claw. My limbs would twist. I would convulse and like buck and you know, just it was intense, and it was very physical. But at the same time, it's very psychological and spiritual and energy focused, because you're going through all this stuff inside of you at the same time. Sometimes I wouldn't breathe at all. My stomach would distend sometimes and bloat and like grow. My back would twist. It just depends. Sometimes it can be different. Sometimes it would be that just my face would change, but I would continue to do things like normal, you know, around the house. And a lot of times they don't want people to know it's happening. Mm-hmm. So, and then sometimes they don't give a damn, and they'll do it when you're in public. You know?
That's a shock factor.
Yeah.
But you do contort into positions that you would never normally be able to get into.
Never. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was one point where the only thing that was touching the floor were the tips of my toes and the top of my head. And that was it. Being able to push things and move things, you know, physically, that you shouldn't be able to do. It's just strange. Sometimes you're just so far pushed back that you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
The sounds that come out of you are just
Grotesque.
Yeah, they are. And it starts to blur everything. It's horrible. It's just, I see people, you see people in the field who are going around and they are talking about demon this and demon that, and saying they think they're possessed, or they went to this place and just all of a sudden they're possessed. And I don't think that if they really understood what they were
possession is.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean. There's so many cases used to come to me. Oh, I got a demon, I'm possessed, this, that, and the other. And I'd be talking to them within a few seconds. I knew whether they were possessed or not, whether they had a demon or not. A demon, as they call it. I don't like to use the word because that, to me, is another man-made word. But, it's... Yeah, I understand where you're coming from there. Half the time, a lot of the time, it's their imagination, or they want to flaming just get on the party wagon.
Yeah. Yeah, and they want to exploit this and profit from it, but coming from my perspective, I don't understand that. I'm not.
No, if they would know it if they had a demon.
They would know, and they wouldn't walk around talking about it like that. Not like that. I feel like if, in my position, I feel like it's sort of my duty to talk about this because somebody needs to talk about it.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a certain awareness that is brought forth about the reality of it, what it's really like. And I'm definitely not here to profit off of it. Lord knows. That's not.
No, I admire you for coming out and talking about it. I've worked on many of these cases over the years. Yeah. I worked on one in New Zealand where the actual priest that was trying to do the exorcism ended up collapsing on the floor, and he had to go away into these like nursing homes, rehabilitation place, what they called.
Yeah. It takes a toll. It takes a toll on the people around you and on yourself.
Yeah, and when he did recover, he said he would go back into it. That's it, and finished.
Yeah, definitely.
That woman, she didn't want to talk about it. So I do admire you for coming out and talking about it. I really do. I think you're very brave.
I think it's important. I think.
Yeah.
I really think that it's somebody's got to do it, and if not me, then who?
Yeah. So.
Well, Cindy, let me ask a quick question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
These things, and you say you were dealing with a couple of different ones. Did they ever name themselves?
Yes.
Okay. Now, don't say it. Absolutely don't say it. Okay, but
I never do.
Good.
I don't.
Good, because you shouldn't. But these things that were you able, or was the priest able to force it to name itself, or did it do it in such a way that it was glad to, like it was taunting you? Or, I mean, how did they acknowledge who they were?
The first time, the first exorcism, it was a fight to get the name, but we did get the name, and so we worked from there. But it was a difficult fight to get the name on that one. Sometimes they will just appear, and they'll tell me a name, whether it's the name or not, I don't know, but they'll give me some kind of name, and just they're happy to do it, like they are taunting, that they just offer it up without asking. So I don't know, it's very different. It's both. It happens both ways, I think.
When this was all going on, how long did you have to endure it? I mean, it sounded like you were attacked multiple times over a period of time. For this level of attack that you dealt with, were you able to successfully, be depossessed or exorcised, or did it stop over time? I mean, how long did you have to endure it?
Well, from the first attack to the first exorcism, it was about a month and a half or so.
That quickly?
Yeah, it was very quick. After the first exorcism, things were quiet for a while, but they didn't stay quiet. So, yeah, it didn't end at the first exorcism. I wish it had.
They usually don't.
Yeah. And I didn't know then. I didn't know that, and I certainly didn't look into it because I guess I didn't want to know. But no, it didn't end there. So it continued. I moved, and was hoping that everything was going to be okay, and unfortunately it was not. So moving is not the answer in these situations usually, I would think. I know in my situation, moving was not the answer. It didn't help. So yeah, it's gone on for a while.
Did these things ever physically manifest to where you could see them visually?
They did to my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Me, they were mostly shadows, just black masses. That's generally what I saw. The only time I saw anything different was before all this, when I was still younger, a young adult. And I saw, living at the house that I grew up in, I saw something standing in a window of a door in it. And I saw this thing standing on the other side of the door. And it was big, broad-shouldered, had a hat with a brim.
Why do they always...
I could really was the shape.
I haven't heard about one of them. The Hat Men, they were very popular about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Everybody was seeing them everywhere. They were all over the place. And
this
recently,
had to be,
not at all.
Yeah. This was definitely probably 27 years ago when that happened.
Mm.
And I saw that. So, but...
You don't hear much about them nowadays. And yet
you
they
really
used to
don't.
they used to be everywhere.
Usually it's mostly shadow figures you see. But,
and they'd always stand in a doorway. Quite often they'd stand in the doorway.
I've seen them several, and my daughter saw, and she's, like I said, she visually, she sees things. She saw this thing in the kitchen, and it went from the kitchen into my bedroom, and she described it as sort of shuffling, and it was big and massive and hunched over and had long arms and claws, and it was moving too fast for the speed it was going. Its body movements were very rapid, but it was going slowly, and it turned and went into my bedroom where I was sleeping, and she woke me up. She woke me up and got me to get up and get out of bed. It was pretty early in the morning. So, a lot of shadows. Most of everything I see as far as these things are concerned is inside, in my mind's eye. I see them. And that's how they'll usually, appear to me as far as just, their form. They like to be in shadows a lot, in dark, deep shadows and corners, things like that. They like to hide in dark places. So I'm not ashamed to say that I do sleep with a light on in my room.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I don't blame you at all. So you had you moved away from the house after the first exorcism. You moved from that house to another house where things carried on.
Yes.
And it started to come back again. Were you getting possessed again?
Yeah.
Or was it just paranormal happenings in the house?
No, it happened pretty quick, and the first thing that happened was an attack out of the blue. And I was sitting outside. It was just a really pretty day. It was bright.
Mm-hmm.
It was spring. It was beautiful. And I was in a very good mood and very happy. And, I had a fresh start, and it seemed like things were getting better. And it just happened. Just out of nowhere. So I still was in denial, even though that happened. I was like, okay, this is just, I didn't, after you've been through that and been through an exorcism, you don't want to do it again.
No.
There's nothing in you that wants to do it again. And I did not want to do it again. So I just was like, okay, well, these things are going to try, but they're not, going to be successful. And, it's not going to happen, and it's not happening. It's not. Maybe it's just some residual stuff. I don't know, but I was in denial again.
Oh, it could have been just saying, right, okay, I've still got control. Here you are, still proving it.
Yeah.
But did you call on the same paranormal team again?
I was actually speaking to them a couple of months, maybe a month or so. A month or two after that attack, they contacted me because that's when Destination America had gotten in touch with them and was interested in doing an episode on my story.
Yeah.
And so they had contacted me. I told them, what was going on, and they, recommended some things for me to do. And they thought, well, maybe it's just because the show contacted us and these things kind of knew it was happening and they're trying to stop it. And, we went through these scenarios and we just kind of moved forward with it. And one of them had decided they wanted to write a book about it. And it didn't go very well for her or for me. And things just got...
What do you mean it didn't go very well? You couldn't get into writing the book?
No. I met with her at one point and she was a founder of the paranormal group.
Yeah.
I met with her at a restaurant one day to start to kind of hammer things out and figure out what direction she was going to go in. And I was sitting across from her in the booth, and I had an attack in the restaurant.
Wow.
And she got a phone call not very long after that. One of her parents was very sick, very quickly. And we didn't attempt it again after that. It was just kind of, it didn't happen. So
what happened in the restaurant? And I suppose people started looking at you a bit strange.
I don't remember. I don't know. I know she was terrified. I know she looked scared to death. Even having gone through, she was there for the exorcism. She looked terrified, and I don't blame her. So, it just, I suffered another attack on the way home, and it didn't go very well. It didn't go well.
So did you have another exorcism after that?
I did. It finally, things just got pretty crazy, and it was almost exactly a year. From the other one that I had a second one. I did.
And was it the same entity, do you think?
They did call out the previous one.
Yeah, the trouble is with these things, it's like it's all written in a book inside your head. So
yeah,
the entity would know the name of the whatever it was given out before.
Yes, it would. Something that recently struck me about the second exorcism, and we did different things at this one. There are a lot of factors that go into it. It's not just, the rite of exorcism. There are different strategies and things that you have to know and knowledge about the person's life and what's going on and the people in the person's life. It's a really intricate thing. But the thing that I recently learned is how do you say no in Italian?
Basta. Basta.
They thought that I was saying a time when they thought this thing was saying in the second exorcism, they were asking it, when are you going to leave? When are you going to leave? And they thought it was giving a time or date when it was leaving, and it was actually saying no. And I didn't realize that it was saying no until recently.
I thought no in Italian is still no.
Well, yeah, no. But basta, stop.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was saying basically, no, I'm not, and not giving a time. And I heard that recently, and I realized that's what it was. But anyway, I was okay for a long time after that, though. I moved again. And I did okay for a while, for a few years. And but it's not a time thing with these things. Time is of no consequence. That's not an issue for them. It's not that they're patient. They just don't. They don't follow this.
They don't have a concept of time anyway.
No, they don't.
No.
And so it started happening again. On and off.
On the third move, it started again.
Yeah, it did.
Same MO.
Almost like every time you move, it picks up a new energy.
Yeah, it does. There are more this time. And more as in like not, 5 or 6, but more as in like many more. I wouldn't even begin to put a number on it because I don't know.
Cindy, did you have a third exorcism?
No, I have not.
Okay.
There is. I think there's probably talk about it, but.
What talk about doing an exorcism?
Yeah, but I'm not. I'm not. I don't think I'm ready for that yet.
So, just to clarify, the attacks are still continuing?
Yeah.
Are they more frequent than they were before, or about the same intensity, or how would you rate it?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Lately, as far as the past, few months, maybe. So, they're all intense, but definitely more frequent lately.
And health-wise, yourself, how are you feeling?
I'm tired. I'm pretty exhausted. Going through a lot. Things are pretty. Right now, there's a lot on my shoulders, so I've got to kind of keep going. I can't.
Are you finding that everything is getting out of hand around you?
Yeah.
Problem-wise and things like that. One problem after another pounding on top of you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
It's not good.
Oh, no, it's not.
No.
And I'm isolated.
And this is not an open invitation for every paranormal team out there to try and get hold of Cindy to try and give her an exorcism or try and investigate her. So don't even try it.
Nope. And I've got people as we speak who are helping me. I've got a couple of people in particular who are very supportive and who are understanding and know what is going on. And
well, they know you. They know you.
Yes. And so, you know, and I'm isolated at this point. Right now, I'm, as far as geographically, I'm 5 to 6 hours away from everybody I know. So I'm pretty alone in where I'm at, and I can't leave right now. I want to, but there's no possible way that I can. So, you know, I'm kind of dealing with it, you know, on my own at this point, as far as just physically.
And your children, are they coping okay at the moment?
They are. They're very much kept away from it. My daughter, who's my oldest, that's living with me now, is 17. She's very aware. She's very, very in tune with things, and she's very aware of what's going on. And she is very much in contact with, you know, the people who help me. So, got a good support system with that. The younger kids have no clue. They don't know. They're very much kept away from it, and I've always been that way. Yeah. I'm a very protective mother, and as strange as it sounds, and I know people that don't understand it, they're protected, and they're blissfully unaware, and that's how it's going to stay. So,
good. As long as these things don't, through you, try to do anything to affect them.
No, they've never done that. I've never hurt anybody. I never would, because there's always that part of me that's there, and the only person that's ever been hurt physically through this is me, and that's the way it's going to stay.
That's good. That's good.
I've never been thoughts of anything like that. There've never been urges or anything. Okay. They're just these precious little, you know, they're pure and they're innocent, and they can't be touched.
That's right. They can't. And whatever makes you feel better, whether you're, you know, like you were saying, you wear a crucifix and one thing or another, whatever makes you feel better, carry on with it. You know, carry on with it, because it's your support.
Yeah, and that's what I do. I do that a lot, and it does help. So that's what we do.
Wow.
Right, we're coming to the end now, Cindy, aren't we, Mark?
Yes, we are. Cindy, where can people find your book?
They can find it on Amazon. It's available there. It's also available through the publisher, which is Dark Moon Press. You can find a link to it on my public figure page, which is Cindy Sauer. And if you'd like a signed copy, you can get in touch with me. I do have copies right now, and I can sign them and send them out. So there are several ways. Also at barnesandnoble.com, on the website, the book is there as well. So The Exorcism of Cindy Sauer. It's Google it. I'm sure you can find it there too. It's everywhere.
And again, that the title is The Exorcism of Cindy Sauer.
Yeah.
And Sauer spelled Sauer.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Well, Cindy, we have come to the end here. Thank you so much for coming on to the program. Your tale is absolutely riveting. And, you know, we would definitely like to keep in touch with you and like to know how things are going with you.
And that would be really good. I would appreciate that. And thank you for having me on. It's, you know, it seems odd to want to talk about it, I'm sure, to a lot of people. But again, you know, there are people who don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah, and you're helping them.
Definitely.
By talking about it, you are helping them. Now, don't go away, Cindy.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
stay there.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to this Halloween edition of Paranormal UK Radio. Tune in next week 10 p.m. Eastern Time every Wednesday here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And for those who missed the live broadcasts, our podcast, Irene, where can people hear that?
Oh, sugar, I got grump in my mouth. Everywhere.
Thank you very much. Okay. Have a great night, everybody. We'll catch you soon.